Good afternoon, Kentucky. We are super excited to be with you today. I hope you're able to enjoy this little sliver of sunshine that we have this afternoon. But that's not the only thing that is making us happy today. Today, we are our first guest chef in a minute that we have had for this fall semester as we're trying still to bring you exciting content and new ideas of what to do with local food. And the person that I'm about to introduce, he does that through and through. So I'm going to bring in just a second, Chef Lawrence Weeks. He is the executive chef out at Honeywood, which is one of Weedle Michael's restaurants, the one that's in Summit at Fritz Farm. So I'm going to bring him in. Just know that if you have comments, please just put them in the chat and I'll be able to respond to them. While Chef Weeks is cooking, if you have questions, put those in the chat and I'll be sure to pass those on to Chef. But right now I'm going to bring him in. Good afternoon, Chef. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing well. Yeah. Good to see you. And we're excited about this dish. Can you tell us a little bit about I know in your bio we had a statement about how you love to use sustainable fish and in a lot of your dishes, and you're going to prepare fish for us today, right?
Absolutely. Sustainability in our seafood and our waterways in Kentucky has been a big focus of mine recently. So this dish that I'm bringing to you today is something that is just an all-around delicious dish and healthy. It's starring some catfish out of Lake Barkley in Western Kentucky.
Okay.
And then it's kind of got a Japanese feel to it. My parents were both in the military and they lived in Okinawa for a couple of years. So a lot of my food has got like a Southern Japanese flair to it.
Perfect. We'll get all sorts of new ideas.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I am really excited. You come to Honeywood from Louisville, right? You had your own restaurant while you were there?
No, actually, I do come from Louisville,
Yeah.
but I had my own pop-up restaurant.
Pop-up. Okay.
Locals only Louisville, and we would pop up. We were the first changing pop-up in Louisville in our era, and we would pop up around town about once a month and serve different dishes and different cuisines depending on how the venue went. But our focus was to focus on all local business, people, and product to kind of highlight what we have going on in Kentucky.
And so you bring all that with you to Honeywood. I've seen some of the specials that you've highlighted. Is there anything you want to talk about that you've got going on right now? We'll get into special events at the end, but are you featuring something right now that you want to bring up?
As of right now, there's not anything in particular that I want to bring up.
Okay.
But we're moving a lot further into the vegetable season, and all of our vegetables for our specials are going to be from Kentucky farmers. So we're really excited about the mushrooms that we got coming on right now.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Our staff farmer, David Wagner of Three Springs Farms, is bringing us a lot of vegetables, and we're going to be featuring that in our special menu and definitely in the events that we have coming up.
All right. Well, I won't hold you back any longer, Chef. I'm going to let you get to it because I can't wait to see what you do with this dish.
Okay. So glad to have you guys at home joining in. I would encourage you guys it's 5 o'clock, not somewhere but here. So grab yourself a glass of wine, grab a beer, grab a gin and tonic. If you're participating in Sober October, grab yourself a soda water, and let's get into it. So the dish that I'm making today is kind of a Kentucky play on a Japanese bento box. So we've got, like I said, catfish raised in Western Kentucky and Lake Barkley. We've got local cabbage for a salad, some local mushrooms that were foraged out in central Kentucky. We've got Kentuckyaki, sauce, which is coming from Bourbon Barrel Foods. And then we've got a Benny seed gamashio spice, which is basically sesame seeds toasted. But instead of sesame seeds, we've got black sesame seeds and Benny seed, which is more of a southern ingredient. And then the last thing going with that is something called yaki onigiri, which is a grilled rice cake in Japan. So we're going to start with the process that's going to take the longest, which is cooking the rice. Right here, we've got a cup of Japanese sushi rice. A lot of people will ask you to rinse your rice for a lot of recipes. That gets rid of a lot of the starch. But for this recipe, we're gonna want to keep the starch on there to keep the rice ball whole. So we'll put a cup of rice right in our rice cooker. And I recommend for everybody to get a rice cooker. If you're cooking rice on the stove or in the oven, it's just gonna make your life harder. You can go to your local grocery store, restaurant supply store, and get a rice cooker for really cheap. And it's gonna make your life so much easier. Dinners at home are gonna be easier. For chicken and rice, you just throw it in there, and in 10 minutes, you're gonna have a pot of rice. So for every cup of rice, we're going to do 1 1/4 ratio of water and a pinch of salt. So I'm gonna go over here and grab some water. And while this rice is cooking, we'll start to prep our vegetables so that by the time our rice is done, we can have everything cooking, we can have things prepped, ready to go, and everything will come back at once. All right, so our rice is going in the rice cooker. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get our mushrooms ready for our rice cakes. So the rice cakes are gonna get mushrooms and some shredded carrots. So these carrots that I have are gonna be pre-shredded. Just any grocery store carrot that you can find. We just take it to a cheese grater and shred it really fine. These are some local forage mushrooms. So we have maitake mushrooms, which are really coming out this year in the autumn and the early winter. We've got some shiitake mushrooms, which are actually farm raised inside in Berea, Kentucky. And we're just gonna tear those down into smaller pieces with our hands. They've already been washed. I would recommend looking up how to wash certain mushrooms because each mushroom is gonna react differently to the water content, especially wild mushrooms. So once we've got all of our mushrooms torn down, we're gonna focus on giving them a light saute. And with that saute, we're gonna add a little bit of our secret sauce, which is sorghum ginger sauce. It's something that we do at the restaurant. And it is basically a sauce which is my take on like a teppanyaki or a hibachi ginger sauce. So we've got soy sauce, bourbon barrel soy sauce, mirin, rice wine vinegar, carrots, ginger, onion, a good bit of sorghum in there. And then I can't tell you the rest, but we're gonna have some of this on sale online soon. So look out for that. Now that I've got the vegetables going, I'm gonna head to the stove and give them a light saute.
I tell you, Chef, that bourbon barrel soy sauce is one of my favorites. You can almost drink that stuff.
Absolutely. Bourbon Barrel Foods is outside of Louisville, Kentucky, in the historic Butchertown neighborhood. Matt Jamie is the owner over there, and they do a great job of actually, from start to finish, making soy sauce, but aging it in a bourbon barrel as opposed to large vats as they do in Japan. It's got a great flavor. It's really unique, and a great byproduct that they have after that is the bourbon barrel mash. After they're done making the soy sauce, the spent soy mash, we actually use at the restaurant to season our katsu chicken sandwich.
Okay. Such an ingenious way to use part of a process that might otherwise be discarded.
Absolutely. It's my way of, taking the Kentucky, Appalachian, Central Kentucky way of using everything from nose to tail, or a lot of people say they'll eat everything but the fur. So it's like they'll take every bit of the process and use it for something specific. So instead of throwing that away, we reconstitute it and use it for something different.
Perfect.
So our pan's heating up. Once it gets about medium, I like to add in my neutral oil. I'm using just canola oil today. And when you're sauteing mushrooms, you're going to add a little bit more than what you would for just a simple saute, because those mushrooms are actually going to soak up some of that oil. Once your oil starts to heat up a bit and gets a little bit of a shimmer, then you know it's almost time to add your vegetables. All right, so I've got my carrots, my wild mushrooms, my shiitakes, and maitakes, and I'm waiting on my oil to come up to temp. And I'm not looking to get a super hard sear on these. I just want to kind of saute it to bring out the roasted flavors, bring out the natural umami, the glutamic acids in it, the natural MSG that's kind of in mushrooms. So once I see that oil start to get to the point to where it starts to shimmer, if you're at home and you're not too familiar with that, you can kind of put a mushroom in, and you can kind of hear that magical sound of that sizzle. If you don't hear that, then you can take a spoon or whatever and get your mushroom out, wait till it heats up. It's going to be all good. You can do that with meat, seafood. If your pan's not ready, don't be scared to take it out and wait until it is ready. It's not going to ruin anything. So I've got my mushrooms in. We'll give it a good toss one time to get the oils to coat all of the mushrooms. We'll give it a pinch of salt to bring out the moisture, because salt draws out moisture in food. So we'll give it a pinch of salt and just let it sit on one side, get a nice hard sear on the bottom, and the top side we'll let steam out. So we'll have a crusty, delicious roasted mushroom on the bottom and kind of a steamed mushroom on top. Do we have any questions coming in?
We don't have any questions, but we have a viewer who has had your sandwich and said that it was very yummy.
Oh. You said they had the sandwich?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's actually Eileen O'Donoghue, our favorite lamb lady.
Yeah. Hi, Eileen.
So this method is a little bit different than what I've done before. I think it would be hard to like resist the temptation to like keep tossing your mushrooms. So you got to be patient and just kind of let them sit to get the crust, right?
Right. Um, yeah, you have to be patient with cooking. I think the error that a lot of people have in the kitchen is they're super worried about things burning or things like anything going wrong. And you have to kind of just trust the food and trust yourself enough to know that um, naturally you'll know when it's time to do something. If you see a lot of smoke and you can smell something burning, then it's burning.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
see something is not sizzling, and you know that sound when you get the onion and the garlic in the pan and it starts to sizzle, you know that pan's not ready. So don't try to force it and try to make something out of nothing, I guess. So just trust all your senses and not just the recipe, because the recipe will just kind of give you guidelines on how to do it, but you have to trust your own instinct as a cook.
That's great advice. It's advice that we try to give in the Food Connection kitchen often.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have it in us. It's a primitive instinct. All right. So while that mushroom is going, we're gonna get into our cabbage salad that's going alongside, and we're just using some local cabbage. This is green cabbage, brought to us by David Wagner at Three Springs. We're gonna take out just the last few layers of the cabbage, and we're gonna cut it into quarters. You can use this cabbage. This is my favorite way to cut cabbage and eat cabbage. It's super thin. I like, honestly, adding it to burgers instead of lettuce. I like adding it to tacos. It's just the technique on how to cut cabbage that you could use for a whole lot of applications, sauteed or anything else. So we're going to take our quarter of cabbage and we're going to kind of put it on its side. And starting at the point, we're going to cut it super thin, as thin as possible. And of course, I can cut it thinner than people who don't have much knife skills, but it's okay. Just cut it as thin as you can, and it's going to turn out great. So we're cutting it super thin to where it's kind of confetti. And once you get to the point to where you hit the core of the cabbage, you're going to turn it a little bit and keep cutting it thin until you kind of cut your way around the core, and you're going to rotate the cabbage. Once you get to a point where you can't cut it anymore, there's still a little bit on there, so you turn that on its side and keep cutting. All right. At this point, I'm going to check in on these mushrooms. Give them a light toss. They're looking beautiful. They're roasted on one side, getting a little bit wilted on the other. They're seasoned nicely. And we're going to give them a taste. They taste amazing. Mushrooms are one of the most underutilized ingredients, I think. Super sustainable product. And it's just delicious and good for you. So once these are done, We're going to take them off the heat and kind of let them chill out. And then once we clean up our catfish, we're going to cut them up real fine, add our carrots, our ginger dressing, and toss it with the cooked rice when that's finished. Make a rice ball, and then cook that off on both sides to make it nice and crispy. So we'll just let this hang out. So here I've got some of our catfish. I've got a couple pieces of this beautiful catfish. A lot of people have bad connotations with catfish, but the catfish that we get in Kentucky, especially Lake Barkley, Kentucky Lake, is so beautiful. And it is clean. And what we're going to do when you look at a side of catfish is you can clearly see the fillet. And on the upper portion of it, you can see a divide in the muscle where there's going to be diagonal lines that go up from the head portion to the tail. We're going to use our knife and take that a little bit off. We refer to that as a skirt. And we're going to discard that. Just on the top portion of each fillet. It kind of curls underneath. You don't want to take too much off. Maybe a 1/4 inch off of each piece of fish. Once you take that skirt off, you're going to do 2 more things. In our case, we never really have to worry about it, but you're going to run your hand down the center of the fish to make sure that there's no pin bones. On catfish, it's not a big problem, but on other fish, sometimes there is a bone in there that you'll have to take out. We don't have any. So I have 3 fillets here. That's for a family of 2 or 3. And we're going to turn our piece of catfish around on the skin side. And you can kind of tell the skin side has a little bit of silver on it and a little bit of fat on the back. We're going to take our knife and lightly score the back so the piece of catfish doesn't curl.
Okay, so that's why you do that. Is there a reason for taking the skirt off as well? Is that for curling?
The piece of the skirt, it in my opinion, it just doesn't have the greatest texture. It's a little bit fattier and chewier than I would say the American palate is used to. Okay. So if you just clean it up a bit, it's going to make a nicer fillet. It's going to eat a lot nicer.
We also have a question from the audience. Chef, what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight we are drinking Brown Estate Chardonnay.
All right.
The House of Brown Estate Chardonnay. We actually did a dinner with them last February for our Black History Month dinner. Coral Brown came out, and we had a nice dinner.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
To feature all their wines. Yeah. And then you did courses with each of their wines.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Absolutely. I want to know what you got. What are you guys drinking at home? Let me know what they say they're drinking at home.
I'll see if we get some comments on that, Chef.
All right. All right. So, sorry, I know I'm out of frame. And if you guys recognize this kitchen, it's for good reason. It's my friend Sam Ford's beautiful kitchen. Say hi, Sam.
Hello. I'm I'm your vaunted camera person today.
All right, so we're all ready to go. And like I said, I've got a container of our Kentuckyaki from Bourbon Barrel Foods. All I did with this is heat it up slightly, and we added a pinch of cornstarch to it so that it'll stick better to the fish. If you don't have Kentuckyaki from Bourbon Barrel Foods, you can look up a traditional Japanese teriyaki marinade, which is it's traditionally like equal parts soy sauce, sugar, mirin, sake, a little touch of vinegar, and you're going to get yourself a similar product. Maybe not as good, but similar.
But for the Kentuckyaki version, you sub out sorghum, right?
Right.
Sweetness. All right. Well, we do have a couple of responses, Chef. We have Allagash White. So that's from Jake. And then Eileen says she's going for a G&T, but no fruit to put in her gin and tonic.
Well, cheers, Eileen.
Cheers to everybody.
Yeah, cheers, everybody. Thanks for coming on to Instagram Live. Facebook Live. They're owned by the same person. It's all good. So at this point, our rice is done cooking, and we're going to get into cooking our fish, and then we'll assemble our final plate up. So I'm just going to clean off this cutting board real quick. We had raw fish on here. All right. So at this point, I'm going to open up my rice cooker to let some of that steam out. And we're going to form the rice cakes by hand after we get this catfish on. So,
And Sam, I'm going to talk to you. That's your cast iron skillet, right? You said you had this one. This one's an old one.
I'm using Sam's cast iron skillet, but yes, it is. It's a very old one. It's a Lodge pan.
It's not. It's like maybe 15 years old.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not like a family heirloom.
No, not
Okay.
this one. Not this one. No.
Cast iron isn't super popular in Sri Lanka.
Yeah. But we're gonna heat this pan up. Same deal. We're gonna use neutral canola oil in it. We're gonna lightly season our catfish. Give it a good sear. Turn it over when it's nice and brown on one side. Hit it with our teriyaki glaze and kind of let it braise down with a little bit of water so it gets a nice flaky texture. So while that's heating up, let's go ahead and get our rice balls ready. So with our mushrooms that have been seared off, we're going to give them a nice chop. We don't want to give them a complete mince, but we want to break them down a little bit to where they're not big chunks. Once we've got those broken down, let me grab a spatula. We're going to take our rice out of the rice cooker. We're going to put some of our carrots in there. Just raw grated carrots. We are going to put our mushrooms in. And then we're going to put a little bit of our sorghum ginger dressing in there, just a touch, maybe a teaspoon for flavor. And using a spatula, we're actually going to go around the rice one time. And then using the spatula like a knife, we're going to kind of cut the ingredients in, fluffing them up and not smashing them at all or stirring them, but kind of cutting the ingredients in. Before we go into a pan or form our rice balls, we're going to give it a taste. I'm at home today, so I'm going to use my hands. It needs a little bit more sorghum dressing, a little bit more salt. But otherwise, I think we're good. Another trick to handling this rice is to kind of run some water on your hands so it doesn't stick. So I'm going to go ahead and wash or run some water on my hands a bit. Grab a rice ball, about the size of a golf ball for each. And you're just going to toss it back and forth and lightly form it till it's a ball. And then use your hands to kind of press it down till it's more of a cake. We're going to do a couple more of these, and I think our cast iron is ready.
And that process is why you don't rinse this rice, right, Chef? So that the starches help stick it together into the cake formation.
Correct, correct. You want all the starches to be on there so that it kind of forms. And once it cools down, it'll set as a rice ball as opposed to breaking apart.
So is this a step you could actually do ahead, maybe?
This is absolutely a step you could do ahead of time. If you actually want to enjoy these rice balls just alone and not sear them, then that's a great way to do it. If you have leftovers, this is a great dish where you can take, your piece of fish or some beef or chicken, and you can cook it, and then you can heat up some of these rice balls the next day. So I've got 4 rice balls. Small pan. small pan on for our rice balls. Get some neutral oil going for our fish. You just want enough oil to where it coats the bottom of the pan. And I'll take all 3 pieces of fish. Hit it with just a little bit of salt. You can hear that pan is ready. Once you drop your fish in, you're going to drop the temperature on your pan to a medium low. So it can form a nice crust on the top. And on the side of it, you're going to have a smaller pan for your rice cake. We're going to put some more neutral oil in. And it's going to be a shallow fry. Fish festival. So our fish is cooking up nicely. Our pan's heating up. And we're almost done. We're almost ready to plate.
Chef, on these fish fillets, I think some people are a little if they haven't cooked a lot of seafood, they are a little intimidated by cooking it. They're afraid they'll overcook. You're teaching us to sear a bit and then turn the heat down. Are there any other tips you could give home cooks for if they're wanting to try more fish?
A pretty good indicator on fish, if you're starting to overcook it, is if there's a protein in fish that if you start to overcook it, it looks like white is coming out of it. It looks like egg white is coming out of it. It's actually the same protein that are in egg whites.
Okay.
So once that starts to come out, you know that it's done. It's cooked all the way through. It's time to come off. Don't cook it anymore.
Okay.
A fish like catfish, it's got a pretty good muscle structure, pretty tight proteins. So you can cook it pretty far without it getting dry. But things like salmon, which has got a high fat profile, you definitely don't want to overcook it or it'll get dry, super flaky, things like that.
Okay. Maybe that'll inspire people to try more fish at home.
Absolutely. You shouldn't be afraid of seafood, especially in this region. We've been eating it for so long. So once you got a golden crust on your catfish, you kind of see it's not too hard of a sear, but you got a golden crust on it to give it a nice base. That's when you're going to turn your heat down to low. I've got about 3/4 of a cup of Kentuckyaki sauce. To about 1/4 cup of water. That water is just going to give that fish a little bit of time to cook through without over reducing the sauce that we have. So while that's going on low heat and braising, getting real nice and glazy, we've got a hot pan over here for our rice cakes. Now that these have cooled down a bit, they've set up. We put them in our hot saute pan and put them back on a very low flame so that they can just kind of get nice and crispy on one side, and the inside is going to be nice and gooey, and the outside is going to be nice and crispy. So plates. So you can kind of tell on your glaze when the catfish, or when the sauce around the catfish starts to get larger bubbles. I don't know if you can tell, but the bubbles start to get larger and the boil starts to get less aggressive. You can kind of tell that the sugars are cooking down and getting a little glazed. We're going to toss our fish around one more time in there, and it's done cooking at this point. So we're going to turn it off the heat. Same with our rice cakes. You can kind of see the bubbles are getting less aggressive. That means that there's less moisture in them, and the outside's getting nice and crispy. So we're going to flip them over. And turn off the heat. And we're going to let the residual heat cook those all the way through while we start to plate everything else up over here. Mini bowl.
Mini bowl? Yeah, it's in the same thing as the plates. Bottom right.
So for at home, you may not want to get this fancy. Why not? It's super simple. So we're going to take the remainder of that sorghum ginger sauce, put a healthy amount in a bowl, put the remainder of our carrots, a good portion of our cabbage, and give it a nice toss. And like I said, this is a dish that was meant to be for like a healthy lunch or like a super quick and easy dinner. A lot of these components you could eat warm or hot or even cold if you enjoy food like that. But this was kind of my idea on like a Kentucky bento box. So we're going to take that cabbage and carrot salad, take a nice handful, kind of put it off to the side. We're going to go back around and check on our rice cakes and our catfish. So our rice cakes we're going to put off to the side. Then our catfish is just gonna go off by itself. And then at the very end, we're gonna spoon over a little bit of this sauce.
Oh my goodness. I'm so hungry. I made the mistake of watching this whole thing without having eaten. That I can just imagine all of the fresh flavors, all of the light flavors, but with the underpinnings of all of those wonderful fall veg and the mushrooms.
Absolutely. And I have one more trick in my book for you guys.
All right.
Like I said, the spice that goes on top, some bene seed, which is basically West African sesame seed, some black sesame seed, and we've got some coarse sea salt we're going to put in a mortar and pestle. These have all been toasted. We're going to give it a light beating, crunching it up a little bit. Everybody's had that, like, that sushi that's had, like, white sesame seed, black sesame seed on it. This is kind of a southern interpretation of that spice. So we've got them all together, and we're going to put it right over this fish to give it some nice crunch and toasty. And that's the end of it.
All right. Okay, great. We're getting a close-up here of this absolutely beautiful dish. Certainly repeatable for those out there, and a nice light Kentucky supper or lunch, as he said. Really gorgeous, easy to repeat. Well, Chef, as you said, you are in this beautiful venue that is Sam Forrest Kitchen. And you guys are about to do a pop-up dinner together, correct?
Absolutely. So Sam and I have known each other for a while. We both started up in the pop-up game, and this is the first time we've actually done a pop-up together.
Intentionally, anyways.
Yeah. How long have we known each other? 4 years? 5 years?
2016 Crave, so just over 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years, and we've got one coming up October 25th at Honeywood.
Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday at Honeywood. We're both going to be there. We're serving Sam snacks. We've got seating from 5 o'clock until about 8:30. Reservations are highly recommended. And if you can't get a reservation or you can't come out to sit, please get some takeout. And if you can't get a reservation that early and you're getting off work later or the times just don't work out, we've actually got an after party starting at Whiskey Bear at 9 o'clock.
Oh, so, okay, good.
Yeah, come see us for that. I'm super excited. It's the first of our Sunday supper series that we're having at Honeywood. So super excited to kind of have one with the first person that I met in Lexington.
Oh, that's a perfect inauguration. We do have the number below if you'd like to call for reservations. And of course, you can always visit the website or their social media pages. And then, Chef, you said on November 8th, there's also a dinner featuring Farmer Joe's Duck. And you were doing that with Chef Tyler McNabb of Holly Hill Inn, right?
Absolutely. So November 8th, we've got a 7-course dinner featuring Farmer Joe's Duck, which is raised in central Kentucky, with Chef Tyler McNabb, one of my co-chefs in the Weta Michael restaurant family. We've got a super beautiful menu for you guys, and we've also got the premiere of some media content that will be released that night. But you have to buy a ticket to see the media content that night. It will be later released, but that night is super important. It's kind of a premiere for us.
Okay, wonderful surprises in store. Chef, thank you so much. I've loved every minute. We appreciate you coming on, taking time to come on tonight. Samantha, thank you for allowing us to come into your kitchen and working the camera. Love to everyone,
Thank you guys.
enjoy good food. Yes, one more cheers to everyone. Thanks for joining us.
This looks really good.